Hey there, podcast listeners. Just a heads up that this bonus episode of The Well contains some strong language.
Before I went through this period of trying every single recipe, I mean like egg whites and things like that in these old recipes. Before I had done all that, I was pretty slutty with my martinis. I would drink all kinds of different martinis. Since doing the show, I've been pretty sort of straight and fastballs over the plate, please. Just like really, really orthodox. And it's not, I honestly don't look down my noses.
You haven't even started yet.
We have not had a martini yet. It's important to state.
I'm such a snob, I have more than one nose to look down. I don't look down my nose at those lower creatures that don't drink straight up martinis. I think, let 1,000 flowers bloom. Let there be many kinds of martinis.
It just occurred to me, I think we're doing the most elitist thing we possibly could right now. We're doing a podcast where we're interviewing our theater friend about not just martinis, but the proper martini.
Well, but there's also...
Well, I'm disgusted by it, by the way, but y'all go ahead.
Well, I think we all are.
Welcome to The Well, your podcast about creativity and inspiration. I am Brandon Edgens.
And I'm Anson Mount.
And where are we right now, Anson?
We're in my dressing room at Playwrights Horizons in New York City.
How's it going?
It's going well. You just saw the matinee.
I guess I could answer that question too. I saw it. It went really well. I really liked it, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It was really a lot of fun. Everyone, if you're in the New York area,
Well, we should tell them the title.
Oh, yeah. Come see a play in New York. See all of them until you find the one that has Anson in it. No, go ahead.
It's called Mankind.
Mankind by
Robert O'Hara.
It's very, very good. Just saw it's going to be playing for another...
through January, possibly extending into February. We'll see.
All right, cool. Everyone seemed to enjoy that last episode of us getting smashed, so...
Yeah, they really enjoyed it. It's one of our most successful episodes.
Which begs the question.
Should we just
Why don't we just do that every time?
just getting messed up.
Just like the martini episode, the whiskey episode, the beer episode, the wine episode, the pink squashed pussycat episode. And just graduate to more and more ridiculous drinks every single time, and just people listen to us get wasted. This is dry January for you.
It is, yeah. So I'm stone cold sober.
Stone? How does that feel?
It actually feels really good.
Uh-huh.
Every time I do it, I'm like, wow, why don't I do this all the time?
Which leads me to the next question. Why are you going to start drinking again?
Usually it happens, it has to do with you.
Okay. Blame me.
Or my February birthday.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And my love of wine. I'm sorry, I love wine and I love whiskey. And, then I just go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, that's how it starts, right? We just like the taste.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where it starts. I can't make it through dry January because my wife's birthday is January 26th, so it always stops.
No, yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
I can't go any further. So I'm not going to bother trying.
You're gonna hang in there. You're gonna keep killing off those slow brain cells.
The slow brain cells, which is coincidentally the story that we're going to have Leon tell. Because we excised that from the main episode, we will have Leon explain his theory about drunkenness. And if we have time, maybe I'll explain my theory about drunkenness, which is not a theory, it is scientific fact.
That's what I say. If you want to be one of the gang, you've got to act like one of the gang. You don't want people to think you're a square, do you?
Do you mean to say you think you have to drink? I don't drink, and I get along all right with the gang.
If you think about a herd of animals, say a herd of antelope. Do antelopes go in herds? I don't even know.
Yes.
Okay. There's a herd of antelopes. And if you look at how fast that herd of antelopes can move across the savannah, it has an average speed. It has a mean velocity. And you can measure that mean velocity. Now, if you introduce to that environment a predator, so you let a couple cheetahs out on the savannah, the cheetahs are going to pick off antelopes at the back of the herd. They're going to pick off the slower ones, they're going to pick off the injured ones, the sick ones. The result of the existence of the predator is that the average speed of the herd is going to go up. Not because the fast antelope are moving any faster, but because you've eliminated some of the slow ones. So your average goes up. When you drink alcohol, it destroys brain cells.
Oh, now you tell
But
me.
it goes after the slow and the injured ones. And it's picking off the slow ones in the herd. And the average speed of your brain just goes way up.
Oh, I see. So
And this is why we're geniuses when we're drunk. Because we're just killing off the laggards.
the lame neurons that can't keep up
That's
pace.
right. That's right. The iron guillotine of alcohol comes down on their slow ass necks.
This is our environmental pressure. This is the
That's
predator
right.
that
This
is
is right.
let loose amongst the neurons.
The silver bullet.
The neuronal Serengeti in
That's
our
right.
mind.
We should pitch it to Discovery.
Right, it should be a little bit milky when it comes out. Now, Plymouth Dry Gin, which I almost brought a bottle of, is a very, very interesting gin for a number of reasons. Because gin is a British drink, and the gin that we use in martini making is usually the British dry gin. Bombay Sapphire, of course, is interesting because it evokes all kinds of imperialist past. Gordon's a little bit less, but a little bit. Plymouth is a gin that is distilled in a distillery that when the Pilgrims,
I was about to say, it sounds American.
yeah, when they left in the Mayflower, I think they hit a storm their first night out, and they turned back, and they made landfall near this distillery, and they spent a night in this distillery, and then took off the next morning for the New World. And so later then this distillery, to capitalize on this, created a gin called Plymouth Gin.
All right.
And it's a very, very good gin. I used to, it's expensive, but I used to call it, and I still do call it, it's my Thanksgiving gin. Because, of course, all of those cheesy tie-ins. But also, it has a lower alcohol content than a lot of gins. And so if I have it for my Thanksgiving gin, I can start drinking it earlier in the day.
All right, so now we're on to martini number 2.
Okay. Oh, I didn't do what I said before. I didn't prep the garnish first. But.
So one thing I did want to get you to do for this episode, whether we use it as a supplemental later or we use it in the episode, it may very well fit, is I'd love you to get to please tell the story of having to ask for your wife's hand in marriage.
Oh, my God. So, Akiko, my partner, colleague, and wife, Akiko Aizawa, is from a very remote part of Japan in Akita Prefecture, up in the northern part of Honshu, just right near Hokkaido, the northern island. And she, when she was a young woman, moved down to Tokyo in defiance of her parents' wishes that she would take on the family insurance business. And when she became an actor, performer in a theater company, they pretty much disowned her. Not officially, nothing on paper, but they were not communicating very well. She maintained some communication with her mother, but her father, not so much. And then this went on for a number of years. After we had gotten involved, her father got quite sick at one point, and Akiko went back home and stayed in the hospital and took care of him. And this led to them essentially reconnecting, and they had a relationship again. And Akiko and I had a conversation because back when they were completely estranged, the question of asking for their blessing was not on the table. That wasn't a factor. But now that they had this connection, we thought, well, maybe we should. And so Akiko communicated to them that we were going to come up and that we needed to talk to them. And I don't think it was ambiguous about what this was going to be. Now, what she said to me was, everything's fine. I'm going to go up a couple days before you, and then you'll come up a couple days afterwards. What she didn't say to me was, he said, don't bring him. I don't care if you come, but do not bring him up here. I don't want to see him. And
but also the other thing she didn't tell you is
that when her sister had brought her now brother-in-law up to ask the same question, her father had chased him out of the house and chased him around the block, kind of thing. And Akiko conveniently didn't mention this to me either. And so I'm literally on the train on the way up, and I called her to check in, and she was like, yeah, everything's fine. And he's literally yelling at her. I didn't hear it, but he's literally like, do not bring him. And like, I don't want to see him. And I never heard any of that, and then showed up at the house, came through the door, and met her father, and we were fine. Mm-hmm. And Akiko had gambled on the fact that whatever he was saying, that when we actually met, it would be okay. Mm-hmm. And that it would particularly be okay if I had no reason to be suspicious. Mm-hmm. And she was right.
Right. What would have happened if you'd been on the train and you?
If she had told me, I would have been freaked out. Like I would have tried to talk Akiko out of it. I said, seems like a bad idea. I don't think we should do this.
But didn't you connect first on movies?
And then, when we started to talk, his favorite movie was The Great Escape. With what's his name, Steve McQueen, which is like, come on, like. Not only do I love that movie, it's a wonderful old World War II movie, but it was also like my dad's favorite movie, and we talked about that and other movies, and we just sort of hit it off. The interesting thing, though, was that that part of the country speaks with a very, very thick dialect, and the Japanese there is very difficult for people like me who speak standard Japanese to understand. And there's a lot of really funny stories about the couple of times that he went down to the big city and nobody could understand what he was saying. But when we got into the actual formal conversation and talking to each other.
But you have to paint the picture of like taking you into the...
Yeah, so we said, okay, well, after we had been there for a couple of days, and then we said, well, there is something we need to talk to you about formally. So we went into the formal room, where there's the god shelf of the grandfather in the background, and you're on the tatami mats, and her father and I knelt facing each other, and Akiko's mother was behind her father, and Akiko was behind me, and we start this conversation. And for the most part, I've never worked so hard to understand what somebody was saying in my life. I could barely understand him. And when you're having a casual conversation, it's much easier because you can gloss over things and be kind of vague and just sort of go with, yeah, we agree, we like the same movies, But when you're actually trying to make sure that you're being understood, it's difficult. And he was working really hard, and I was working really hard. And at a certain point, when we asked him, we were thinking about getting married, and we wanted to ask if you would be okay with that. And he said a remarkable thing. He said, "It's not my place to say yes or no to that. This is up to the two of you. You're both adults. I don't have anything to say." When I tell Akiko's sister this, her jaw drops, of course, like, why did I have such a hard time if he was going to be so understanding?
Why?
But he said, I have one reason to hesitate. And he said, I am old enough to remember a time when your country and my country were at war, when we were enemies. And he said, because I can remember it, it is impossible for me to think that it can't happen again. And he said, if that were to happen, your lives would be very difficult, and I don't wish that for either of you.
Wow.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And then he said something that was to the effect of, but aside from that misgiving, I'm fine. And I had to actually say, excuse me, and I turned around to Akiko and I said, he's saying it's okay, right? I had to check. And her mother is crying and she's crying and everyone's getting very emotional, and it's very very tense and very wrought. But to show you what kind of person Akiko is, after the sort of crest of emotions had happened, her father said, well, is there anything else we need to take care of? And Akiko whipped around and she had all the paperwork laid out. And she was like, sign here, 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 and here, and then an initial here, here, here. And she like snapped into action. Not a hint of emotion, complete bureaucratic competence, and just, yeah.
No, but the sentiment of I wish that for neither of you is a very, very... It's a completely different sentiment than I don't like you and I have a prejudice. That's a different thing.
It also seems like it must have completely... That must be the last thing you were expecting him to say.
Well, and the thing is, like, at the time that he said that, I did not know that he had been telling her not to bring me up there. Mm-hmm. It was on the way back that she told me this. And so in hearing about that and thinking about it over the years, what I think happened, I think the root of his misgivings about me coming up there, and she has since said he was embarrassed. He would be embarrassed to have me in terms of the neighbors, that he wouldn't want to be thought of as related to a foreigner. And I think part of it is that, and part of it was personal too, that he was uncomfortable with an American. And I do think that's rooted in enmity and the war. And you don't go through something, I mean, we don't know what that's like. No. Frankly. And I think he, in establishing that bond that we had, to the degree that we had it, I think he worked through some things. And I think he had to process the fact that this is not my enemy. This is another human being. This is a person who loves my daughter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And not to say that I saved his soul. Not that at all, but I think it gave him an occasion on which to meditate on his own xenophobia. And it's also, to me, it goes to Akiko's kind of faith in his humanity, of sort of like refusing to reduce him to just that. And to say, given the opportunity, in the abstract, he's going to be like this. But when it gets right down to it, when it gets to an actual person in the room, she was like betting on the fact that it would change him.
I think it reminds me of that the Mark Twain quote. Travel is prejudice. Travel is fatal to all forms of prejudice.
Yeah.
And it's for that reason. Like you can hate an abstraction. But when you're in the room with one, it's a lot harder to justify all that stuff to yourself because it's the human level experience.
But that's I think about that in terms of our country. That people, the whole thing of Islamophobia. And how virulent that can be, and it's strong in places that don't have any experience of the actual other. And that if you don't have a Muslim community around you, it's very apparently easy to believe that some town in Missouri has adopted Sharia law, and that there's some kind of conspiracy.
Yeah, you got nothing to measure it against. You got no personal connection to it. Or the simplest one, the one that we seem to live through every single day, is somebody hates or disapproves or hate whatever, gay people. Oh wait, my son or nephew is one. Okay, wait a minute. This is different.
But like that, and then there was so much of that around the marriage equality debate, and you had all these Republicans who were saying some version of that.
Oh, I didn't know. It shouldn't matter, but yeah,
exactly.
It shouldn't matter.
If you transfer it to something else, like, well, I didn't used to think murder was a big deal. But then my wife's sister got murdered, and I know how hard that can be, and now I think murder is wrong. Like, dude, it's called an imagination, and you might want to exercise it.
Empathy.
Yeah.
Empathy.
Hey, sweetheart. He said, you can come in. We're just having martinis.
You're just having martinis.
Yeah.
I thought you'd be in, like, Texas and James Bond.
Oh.
Hey.
Yeah, why didn't we do that? Should we move on to this third?
Move to the third.
Third martini? Yeah.
You may remember from the last episode, martini number 3 was around the time we started to lose it. And it's where I started talking about Stanley Kubrick. So here I am, again, talking about Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket, and a scene Kubrick is having Adam Baldwin do take after take over and over again. And so it was kind of an understood thing, like, don't badmouth the director, in front of everybody. Everyone understood that except Adam Baldwin. Sort of under his breath, but loud enough that other people can hear it, goes, yeah, what the fuck does he want? And Stanley leans up in front of the camera and goes, better acting. But that doesn't signal distrust. That's not the same note as you suck, you fucked up. That's just
right.
like...
Because there's a thing, okay, and it's something that I picked up from Suzuki, and I use it in class sometimes, which is, Suzuki used to say to us, like, and he would do it, like, angrily, but he would yell at us, just do it properly, And there's times when in class when we'll do an exercise, we'll do something, and then I'll say, and I've kind of approached this sort of experimentally with kind of like this sort of scientific mindset of like, okay, let's do that again, but do it better, and then you do it again, and it is palpably better, and then you go like, wait, why was that? Why did you need somebody to say do it better?
Wait,
like what?
Do it properly?
Yeah.
So is there a proper martini?
Well, that's the thing. It's like no, that's the question. That's the question. It's like if you do something and then someone says do it again, but now do it properly, and you do it again and you do it better, then what were you doing the first time?
Right. How was that improper?
How was that improper? And were you not trying? Like, what is that? And that's a really interesting thing to me. Do we not naturally do our best?
And it's interesting because...
And I think that's what Weiler was saying to Heston was, you're going to have to be better. Like, I'm just telling you.
Haven't you got anything to say?
Well, yeah, boy, everybody else put in his 2 cents. How come you're holding out?
I'm not holding out. I'm just listening. Well, come on, let us in on it. How do you feel about drinking? Well, now, that's a pretty hard question to answer.
The Well is produced and edited by Anson Mount and myself, Brandon Edgens. Music by Jonathan Myberg and Brandon Edgens. Please visit us at our website, thewellpod.com. And if you like the show, it really helps us out if you subscribe and give us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. Please remember to drink responsibly. Have a great week.